Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Career Focus series on the Success Insight podcast. This is your host, Howard Fox. The Career Focus series supports individuals pursuing careers that tap into their skills and passions and introduces you to entrepreneurs and companies that are helping to make that dream a reality. Our guest today is David O'Brien. David is a retired project manager and consultant. David has managed projects to implement business systems and processes for Fortune 500 enterprises and government agencies. David, it's a pleasure to have you on the Success Insight podcast. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Fantastic. And for our listeners, I count David as one of my friends, close friend, I hope, I could say. He's shaking his head. That's a good thing. David and I were colleagues with each other for a number of years, and I had the pleasure of being staff to projects that he managed. And just to give a little quick context, I have a client, a coaching client that was interested in being a project manager. Since David had retired, I thought, well, David could be a good resource. And from there, this idea kind of materialized. And I think David would be a great guest on the podcast. And so again, here you are. Thank you for your time. You are retired. How does that feel, by the way?
Well, like I said earlier, I'm only 4 weeks into it, so I'm not an expert at it yet. But like I tell people, I don't have anything scheduled for me. I still have things to do, but I have to motivate myself to do them.
Okay.
I don't have anybody else telling me to do them like I used to.
Okay.
But a little bit, it takes a bit of an adjustment.
I'm sure it does. I mean, there's a whole industry that is devoted to helping folks navigate into this entire landscape of retirement and what that means. And I know you and your wife, Elaine, are planning something very special. If we have some time, I'd love to just chat a little bit about that. If not, that's okay.
Yeah.
First off, I have to ask you, even though it's 4 weeks in, are you getting any occasional nightmares? Like I have to go get to the airport or I have to
No.
have a call, anything like that?
No, nothing like that. I have not looked back yet. I mean, the worst day of retirement, is better than even the best day, in work as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I wouldn't say go that far, but I've not had any misgivings or any, regrets or anything like that. I don't look back.
Okay. Now, before we get into this topic of project management, what is it? What is it? What is a project manager and how you get started in this profession? If you could, can you give us kind of a 30,000-foot view of what has your career looked like?
Yeah. Well, first of all, first thing I did out of college is I went into the Army. I spent 3 years there on active duty. I met my wife over there while I served in Germany. And after I got out of the Army, I got back and I was looking for jobs. And really the big thing then was skills. And I didn't really have any particular skills. Leadership, I think, was something that I had learned, but that didn't have any direct applicability to anything people were looking to do. So I signed up for a course with what used to be a Control Data Institute, which is like a 6-month course, and kind of like today's boot camps that you have today. They've been around for a long time. Very similar self-directed program for computer programming and operations, which I learned. And that got me my first job as a programmer. And so I've been doing that for the first 8 or 9 years. How I got into project management, though, was really kind of interesting. I think a couple of things. One is like everybody else kind of took a step back and I was left standing there on one project. I worked for Price Waterhouse back in the 90s, and there was just an opportunity. People were coming and going on this one project, and I was kind of left standing. So that I ended up holding the bag, so to speak. And I found out that it was really an enjoyable thing to be able to interact with the client in a very meaningful way and have more personal relationships with different people instead of just simply banging away at a computer and getting it to do what you want it to do. So I made a decision at some point. I think it was in the late '90s to pivot to that leadership management role. I went to work for U.S. Bank as a development group manager. After that, I spent nearly all of my career as a consultant. And so I made the decision to stay in project management and call myself a project manager. And so been doing that really for my whole career. I did make a decision in the late 2000s to go back to school. And I hope we get to talk a little bit about that and the importance of that.
Sure.
So I got my master's degree at the University of Minnesota in software engineering. And that was a really big, I knew a lot less about computers, software engineering, and software development than I thought. So, and there were a whole bunch of things that I just wasn't aware of that I became aware of when I went to graduate school. So that really helped me understand kind of what was going on in the world of software that I hadn't known before. So I always encourage people to do that. Go back to the well and get some kind of updating of your knowledge and skills. So I did that and continued working. And you and I worked together on a project for the state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
I got to do a lot of interesting projects, big and small, either as a participant on very, very large programs or kind of a solo project manager on a very small project, all of which were very rewarding and interesting. And then I just decided it was time to move on to something else. So that's kind of it.